So if the Ohio State passing offense performs like this in 2 weeks in Columbus against Penn State, then we have something. Buckeyes defeat Cornhuskers 56-14. I cut this piece earlier. Unfortunately, we had some technical difficulties, so let's give it another try. Ohio State wins 56-14. Let's break it down from both sides as we do on our instant analysis. If this is the first time you've come across Mark Rogers TV and you're a college football fan, you've come to the right place. Just subscribe right here. We have discussions all week, 24/7, 365 with the best bloggers and broadcasters and writers in college football, and some analysis from myself as well. And we invite you to engage in the conversation, discuss and debate college football with us. All right, JT Barrett looked great. He has looked exceptional for the most part since the Oklahoma game. So the caveat is it Ohio State playing bad teams, bad defenses, or do the Buckeyes truly have it on track? Have they fixed the problems with the passing offense that have been over the past year and a half or so? Barrett, to a certain extent, the offensive line, and the lack of playmakers on the outside, separating, not outfighting defenders, not high-pointing the football, not running good routes, dropping passes. I think it's a little bit of both. We're going to have to see against Penn State. But Barrett was sharp, even if this was against the scout team or somebody else. And Ohio State was playing marginal teams a few weeks ago in Army and UNLV and stepped it up a little bit more against Rutgers. And then significantly, we thought against Maryland, although the Terps look pretty bad on defense at this point. And then certainly against Nebraska. Now, the Huskers are not great, but this is the best defense Ohio State has faced since Oklahoma. And they ripped them apart. It was 35-0 at half, 42-0 right after halftime, and Ohio State could have named the score. It finished off 56-14, but the yardage was almost 700 to 330 or so, 41-12 in first downs at the last point I checked when I started to cut the first video when there was about 3 minutes left to play. What did Ohio State do wrong? Well, it was the Urban Meyer bugaboo of special teams that drives him nuts. And really any reputable coach anywhere in any level of football hates when you mess up on special teams. In particular, Ohio State's opening kickoff went out of bounds. They had their second or third kickoff go to the 32-yard line. This was not a pooch kick. It was a legitimate kickoff. Then they righted the wrong somehow after that. Back to Barrett, he threw the ball extremely well. Yes, the Ohio State receivers were getting open, but he was throwing at times in tight windows, but basically just making the right read, the right decision, and getting it to the open guy. Most impressively was KJ Hill in the passing game. He's by far the most polished Ohio State receiver. Urban Meyer has spoke to this in recent weeks. He finds the soft spot in the zone. He knows how to play man-to-man coverage and break off the route where he needs to, considering what the route calls for, but also knowing where the defender is positioned and where he needs to break to get open. 7 catches for 88 yards and 2 touchdowns for KJ Hill. Terry McLaurin ran a really good route for a touchdown in which he broke to the post, sold the post, and then went to the corner and completely burned the defender to score a big touchdown from 31 yards out, in which JT threw it downfield. People have been begging him to throw it downfield. He looked good doing so to the corner of the end zone from about 35 yards out on that play. Buckeyes led at 35-0. J.K. Dobbins was his normal self, juking defenders, dragging some tacklers. The combination of the size, the speed, and the quickness, the jump start ability is exceptional. He beat the Nebraska defense to the corner a number of times on his first big, long touchdown run of the game. The black shirts did not take the proper angles, did not account for the speed, and JK rounded the corner, took it home. 12 carries for 106. And Mike Weber, now his role is diminished in this offense compared to when he was the 1,000-yard number 1 back last season. But we've talked about it a number of times that Mike Weber will be needed. Having a 1-2 combination, the 1-2 punch in the backfield, especially considering the difference in styles, but also not relying on a true freshman to carry the load against what is going to be now a difficult 5-game stretch. Throw out Illinois and consider the defenses Ohio State will be playing. Penn State, which is probably a better defense than Oklahoma. It's close. Iowa on the road. difficult defense to face. Michigan State, very good defensively. And Michigan, arguably the best defense in the country. Auburn's in there. Certainly Alabama, Clemson, Ohio State. Speaking of which, the Buckeyes defense was what we expected to be. Outstanding. They gave up plays when it didn't matter. Yes, they got torched for 300 yards passing by Tanner Lee, 22 of 38 for 303. No interceptions from Tanner Lee for the first time since game 1. He threw an interception in all 5 of the next Nebraska games until this game against Ohio State, ironically. And his stats look good, but it was all during garbage time. J.D. Spielman had a 77-yard touchdown, also 9 catches for $174, but Ohio State gave up big plays when it didn't matter. So I know that Urban Meyer wants them to play to a standard all the elite teams do. That is why those coaches and programs are so consistent and so good, is they play to a standard regardless of who's on the other side of the ball. But you got to think that there was a bit of a letdown. So Nebraska did gain some yardage in the second half and put up 2 touchdowns. Ohio State on its last drive should have probably opted for the field goal. Sean Nurenberger hit on 8 PATs, but no field goals 1 week after missing 2. And of course, Penn State's coming up next in 2 weeks. So that could have been some good practice time for him. The Ohio State defense, we will see what is currently the ultimate test in stopping a running back in Saquon Barkley. But nobody is running against Ohio State right now. Devine Ezigbo is a fine back who runs for about 100 yards every week, 7 carries for 17 yards. And by the time they would have gotten him the ball more, Nebraska was out of the game and had to put it up. All right. Baron Browning, the Buckeyes right guard, hurt and knocked out for the season in the last game, replaced by Demetrius Knox. And by all accounts, he acquitted himself rather well. And Ohio State's offensive line looks much better. So for Ohio State, it's all about winning a championship, improving and facing this 5-game stretch that's much tougher than what they've seen outside of Oklahoma to date, getting the passing game together, as has been the main focus, but also cleaning up the special teams to make a championship run. For Nebraska, it's about who are we? Who's the next coach? Do we give Mike Riley one more season? Most people think not. It looks like another 4 or 5 win campaign after only winning 5 games his first season in 2015 and then rebounding with 9 wins, but kind of a facade of a good start and a good season in winning the first 7, then losing to the better teams on the schedule. And to see the separation of these 2 programs, Nebraska brought into the Big Ten to bolster the performance on the field, not to make money like Maryland and Rutgers were brought into the Big Ten, but to bolster and amplify the product on the field and challenge the SEC as the best conference. And Nebraska was expected to do that. 62-3 Buckeyes last year was not a fluke. 56-14 could have been whatever, 70-7 or nothing. There's that much distance and separation between these 2 programs. So for Nebraska, they've got to find an athletic director and figure out whether Mike Riley is worth 1 more year, 1 more shot. Otherwise, Scott Frost looks rather good at Central Florida, as everyone can see. Nebraska takes on Purdue. They've got winnable games down the stretch outside of Penn State. They're going to be bowl eligible, possibly. I would bet against it, but it wouldn't surprise me because Northwestern, Minnesota, and the aforementioned Purdue game are winnable. For Ohio State, it's a week off to prepare for Penn State, and what a game that should be in Columbus. Those are probably the 2 best teams in the Big Ten. I still have not given up on Michigan. They probably have the best defense in the Big Ten and one of the very best in college football. We invite your comments on Nebraska football, Ohio State as well, the Big Ten, and the nation right here on Mark Rogers TV.